I want to just go back to quite a fiery exchange that we all had earlier in the week. This involved Alan Dershowitz, who said the following. Let's replay what he said.
Your previous guest, the one who was the reporter from South Africa, couldn't have been more incorrect when she said this is going to come down to the law, a debate about the law and legalism. South Africa is a failed country. It is a lawless country. It's a country with an extraordinarily high rate of violent crime, and it's a country with deep, deep racial divisions and problems.
Now, we've got Alan, who's on the show again after you guys have had your say. But I think in the interest of fairness, you should be able to respond, Robin, to what has been a big talking point in South Africa since Alan said these words. What is your reaction to what he said now you've had time to think about it?
Absolutely. I think Alan has surprisingly managed to do a Mandela here and unite South Africans in reaction to those comments. I think deep disagreement on Twitter, across newspapers and the radio. South Africans really felt that he oversimplified a very diverse, rich, complicated country. South Africans very self-critical. They will agree that there's a lot of work to be done here, but this is not a failed country in the sense that it's the Central African Republic or Somalia with zero institutions and no hope. I mean, just think about it. He himself conceded that there's a gem of a judiciary here, a very rich and vibrant banking system that I must say really managed to sustain and survive the global financial crisis. And of course, an incredibly high voter turnout, about 80%, so which indicates a very connected participation in a democracy. So, you know, I think the only thing South Africa would probably really be disappointed with at the moment is, you know, the South African cricket team losing against the test match against Australia. You know, so really, you know, that series didn't go down so well. But anyway, and in terms of the issue of law, I'm here on the ground. I'm in court every day. I'm South African. And, you know, what is so crucial, and, you know, Alan will agree, I think many of us who watch and listen to legal issues will agree that in a criminal case, of course the facts are important, the pathology, the ballistics, you know, or the forensic are all key building blocks, but when it boils down to it, the facts are really only pertinent when it comes to how they are in relation to the legal rules. Would you agree with me?
Absolutely, and in this case, more than many other cases, there are actually areas of law that are in fact unsettled. Particularly, there seems to be a discrepancy between the state arguing that he can't rely on mistaken identity and he arguing that actually it was a mistaken belief in self-defense. And the judge will need to reconcile these areas of law in order to decide the case.
OK, well, look, we've got Alan Dershowitz here. He's been listening very patiently, surprisingly patiently, actually. Alan, what is your response?
Well, first
South
of all,
Africa is up in arms at your comments.
Well, first of all, let me clarify the law. They're dead wrong about the law. There's no disagreement. If you have a reasonable mistake of fact about whether or not you believed it was an intruder or you believed it was your girlfriend, every legal society in the world, everyone, gives that as a defense, including South Africa. So please don't mislead the American public. There is no disagreement about that issue. Nowhere in the common law system is there disagreement about that issue. Now about South Africa. Let me just give you a few facts. In South Africa, there are between 40 and 50 murders per day. There are more murders in South Africa, absolutely, than in the entire United States, even though the United States has 6 times the population. It's a country where people are afraid to go out at night, afraid to take their children out at night. I know when we were there, we were warned. When I went to the bathroom, I had to have a guard kick the door open for me every time. It is a terrifying place at night, and many parts of the country have extraordinarily violent crime. It is a corrupt country.
Alan, all right, Alan, let me present Exhibit 1 and 2, which is Robin and Kelly, who seem to be standing in South Africa right now with big beaming smiles and don't seem to be agreeing that they are living in constant fear of their lives. Let me go back to you,
with a
Robin.
CNN camera, you're always safe.
OK, well, Robin, look, we know that Alan's comments have created a huge furore. And we know that he's got some point. My argument is certainly that the phrase a failed country just should not apply to South Africa. I think it's an incredibly exciting and exotic country. And yes, it has
I agree with that, by
parts.
the way, as an exciting and exotic country that is failing. And unless it's rescued and unless the corruption ends and unless they can reduce the crime rate and narrow the economic disparity, it will fall into the path of other that everybody would acknowledge are failed countries.
But Alan, the idea that somehow it is worse than it was when apartheid ruled
if we could just
is
argue
absolutely ridiculous.
No, I didn't
mean,
say it's worse.
What could
I
be
didn't
worse
say
than
it's
apartheid?
worse. It's just not all that much better for the average poor black who lives in the township, doesn't have clean water, doesn't have access to medical care, doesn't have access to decent food. That is a terrible situation.
That's a very inaccurate. That's an inaccurate
I was there,
statement.
and that's what I've heard from.
That's an inaccurate
from blacks
statement,
and whites
frankly,
alike.
I don't think any of us have the ability to speak on behalf of the people who were oppressed during apartheid. And while they are still suffering many hardships, in many respects, they have things that they did not have during apartheid, and that is a fact.
The right to vote,
for
of
example,
course.
government-funded housing, for example, the ability to vote and pick their government.
Of course.
So it is simply inaccurate to say that things are no better for them.